Hello and welcome back to the Championship Lowdown podcast. I am joined here again with Elliott. Elliott, welcome back after last week.
Thank you very much. They kept me on after my trial.
Yes, we did. And we're back today we saw obviously Second Tier podcast did it a couple of days ago and they're safe to say people weren't happy. So we thought we'd have our go at it. We're doing our Championship Manager 1 to 24 ranking. So I guess we're basing it off just who we think are the best managers and worst managers in the division. So we'll be going off alphabetical order in the team. So we'll start with Birmingham, we'll end with Wrexham, and on the screen you'll see in a minute, but they'll pop up with both of our rankings, and we will sort of just go into it and have a little chat. So we'll start off with your Birmingham City, which is bound to cause some uprise, I guess. But I assume with this one, not too much. I've had him at 7th, and you've got him at 4th. I mean, I suppose I'll let you go first because you should be the expert on this one.
Yeah, so obviously, I'm a Birmingham City fan. I'm a little biased on this, but I think people, maybe I overrate him slightly, but I think people outside of Birmingham will underrate him because they'll look at what we did last year and say, look, they spent all this money, they had the best squad, whatever. There was problems with that squad, even in League One. There's a reason we're still signing 10 players this summer. We had issues with that squad. And if you look at our early season games, we were not the team that won the league. The team that we started the season with was not the team that won the league because we were a completely different outfit. There was a point relatively early on, around sort of October, November time, we lost an away game to Shrewsbury, who were the worst team in the division. And we lost 3-2. And from that point, you could tell Davis just he was not happy, and we changed how we played and we removed any risk. We just basically stopped giving up shots at that point, and we had 70% possession nearly every game. And he adapted to what he we saw. We had a soft underbelly at that time. You could get at us early on in the season. We conceded we were conceding pretty much every game. Part of that was because we had Bailey Peacock-Farrell in goal, who made a mistake every week. And part of that was because actually there were flaws in our structure, but he fixed those very quickly. We changed our shape. He changed personnel. We had a big problem where we started the season with 4 wingers, and for most of the season, we only really had one. He didn't trust Yokoyama because he didn't track back. Scott Wright was injured for most of the year, and so was Emil Hansen. So we only had Keshi Anderson. So we had to change our shape, which we did. And we basically got better throughout the year, which gives me a lot of faith that Davis is somebody who can adapt to when things are going wrong. And I think the version of us that ended the season is a mid-table championship team that we're adding players to. And I think Davis will surprise a lot of people who think he's just had an easy job. That was his first job in football, his first real management job, and he broke the points record. I mean, it's a pretty good sign.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a bit more tentative with mine. I think you'll notice with this list, there's a lot of unknowns with a lot of these managers, a lot of maybe first-time managers or managers not a lot of experience or any experience in English football. Chris Davis sort of falls into the not much experience. Obviously, as you said, it's his first proper job. I know as a Swansea fan as well, he turned us down a couple of seasons ago as well, so he made the jump to Birmingham. Really surprised maybe a few people as he was quite adamant on the Championship thing, but obviously, when you've got a team like Birmingham with that amount of money coming knocking, you're not going to turn it down. As I said, he put the points record. You can't really criticise anything too much anyway that he did in his first season. I think the big question mark for me is obviously, but then again, he might have one of the best teams again this season with the way you're spending and where you're going. So, but I think obviously that was the big question: was it the team that was amazing, or was it him? But I think when you watch you play, obviously there is a clear plan in place. It works. He gets the best out of the players on the pitch. They may not be as good at other teams. You don't know. It just might be him being brilliant. So I think 7th for me was right. I think it just lands sort of that top, in the top tier of managers in the division. But I think obviously with no championship experience, it's hard for me to put him any higher. But I wouldn't be surprised come the end of the season as we're leaning much more towards your 4th than we are to my 7th. If you get another promotion again, for example.
I'm certainly not offended by seeing him 7. I'm like, yeah, that's probably about right. I probably do overrate him because I've watched him for a whole season. But when I look at the list of when I was sorting out the list, I was looking at them. I was like, how many of these managers realistically would I swap for Davis? And it's vanishingly few. I mean, you say I've got 3 above him, and even then, I'm like, would I swap them? Maybe not, but like they're probably a bit better there. I mean, certainly wouldn't swap him for any of the ones underneath, including managers we've had before that we'll get on to.
Yes, well, we'll move on to Blackburn and Valérien Ismaël, where we've gone pretty similar here. 22nd for me, 23rd for you. I mean, it's just not the best, I think is what you'd easily say with this one.
He had like a good season or two, like one season with Barnsley where he absolutely tore it up, and then he got his big move, and he's basically been terrible since. And not only that, but like he's terrible while playing unattractive football, which is a really bad mix. Like his Barnsley team was fine. Like they were ugly to watch, but they were effective, so it's fine. When he was at West Brom, they were ugly to watch and kind of ineffective, which is a really horrible mix.
I mean, yeah, for me, it's so that Barnsley season, you'd think, well, he's going to really crack on now. You just got what everyone wrote off as probably a team that's going to be bad in relegation. He pulls them into the playoffs and then gets the move. I think it was Watford next and then West Brom in English football anyway. And it's just not really bad. I think it was like 40% or less win rate at both of them clubs. Didn't last long, particularly long at either of them. Blackburn fans weren't happy when he started off with a pretty terrible run of form as well. Sort of brought it back towards the last couple of weeks and looked a bit more positive. But I just think if you're basing it off what we've seen of him in English football, obviously there's people above him who may not even have managed in English football yet. But we know what you're getting with Ismaël, and it's not great football and not a great level as far as the last couple of seasons. I said if he finds the form he found at Barnsley, we'll have a whole different conversation about this in a few months' time. But as of right now, I can only base it off what I've seen in the last couple of seasons, and that is pretty dire football. So I think bottom 3 for both of us is probably quite fair from what we've seen off of him.
I will say I don't think there's many. I don't really think there's any terrible managers in the Championship. I just think he's the worst among the worst of the bunch. Like I think he's just like I was really struggling to find like the bottom like 4 because I was like I actually don't think any of these guys are terrible. There was like one guy I immediately put bottom, and then after that it's like I don't know after that.
We'll get onto that because I feel that might cause some interesting ones. But we'll move on from Ismaël and we'll go to another manager towards the bottom of the list. It's Bristol City with Gerhard Struber. 21st for both of us. So the first time we've actually agreed dead on this one. And for me, it was, I just don't really see what people are saying about him. I get he's got experience at, he's quite big clubs with Cologne and Salzburg as well, managing a team that plays in Europe a lot. But at the same time, he struggled when he was in England. I wouldn't say it was particularly impressive the last time he was here with Barnsley. He had a pretty terrible win rate. I think it was like 43%. I can be correct if I'm wrong on that, but not great. He's been good away from England, I'd say. But then I've heard, I think you said to me as well, there's been some Cologne fans who weren't particularly impressed even when they were winning the league. So
so I found some comments from the German or from Cologne fans who basically because I basically looked into him and I was like, it's weird that he was sacked in like May and they won the league. I was like, what's going on there? And he was sacked with 2 games to go because they were in second and I think they'd essentially bottled it and they had no faith in him they needed 4 points, I think, to win the league and they had no faith in him doing it. So they sacked him. The caretaker came in and won the league. The Cologne fans were pretty scathing. So they were playing awful, uninspired football and they're only second place because everyone else was sort of doing the same thing and not playing very well. And that was in the second division of Germany where Cologne are very much a big fish as well. Like they are, like they were expected to win the league, and he sort of stumbled there. It's shades of, for me, like when Lee Clark got Huddersfield promoted unbeaten in League One, and then you actually like look under it, and it's like, they drew every game while having Jordan Rhodes in League One. It's like, maybe he's actually not that good a manager.
Yeah, I'm not particularly impressed by his time in England. He's gone abroad and he said he's done well, but it's with a team that you fairly say was way too big to be playing in the second division of German football, and they proved it by going and win the league. So if you don't trust him to get 4 points from 2 games when you're already second, it's probably not a good sign. So it could work out for Bristol City, but I just can't see him do I don't think he'll replicate what Liam Manning did last season, which we will get onto later. But
he's one of those unknowns. Like, he's another unknown.
Yeah,
but it's hard. Like, he's an unknown I'm less enthused about.
Yeah, there's not much potential because you've seen what he did in England and it wasn't particularly impressive. So it's not like, unless he's revolutionised his entire play style, which I very much doubt, I can have a feeling how Bristol City season's going to go. And they're probably going to be back to their stereotypical 12th, 13th place, I'd imagine. But next up, we have got Nathan Jones. And it's probably our first maybe minor disagreement. I've gone 14th, you've gone for 9th. So, I mean, I'll let you give your reasoning for, obviously, that's top 10. That's quite high up for any of these managers on this list.
As we both talked about just before we recorded, neither of us like Nathan Jones. I find him to be quite odious, to be honest. But as a manager, I actually think, certainly at this level, he's very good. I think he was too good in League One. I think he was second or third best manager in League One. His Charlton team were one of the only teams who genuinely outplayed us all season. They really did a number on us. And, Nathan Jones was gloating to the press as he does. And I was like, you know what? Fair enough. You outfoxed us. Like, you got us. And I think getting that Charlton team promoted, they were, for my money, probably... I really thought they were going to go up automatically. Like, they were on a hell of a run at the end of the season. They looked very, very scary. I thought they were a better team than Wrexham, if I'm being honest. But I think I might just not like Wrexham. I thought they were a better team than Wrexham. I think Nathan Jones had them playing extremely well. And I think when I looked at the list, and I was like, if I was like trying to hire a manager, would I hire Nathan Jones over all the people underneath him? And I think actually, yeah, I would. So I had him at 9. I think he's a really good manager.
Yeah, as you said, I don't like Nathan Jones. I think very few people in football who aren't Charlton fans or Cardiff fans, for example, like Nathan Jones. But he is a good manager. My thing with him is he's hard to. His teams are hard to beat. That is the name of the game with Nathan Jones. Is they are hard to beat. As we saw with Charlton on that run at the end of the season, they were just very, very good. As you said, they were really threatening Wrexham at the top and Wickham as well. Didn't quite get her in the end, but got over the line in the playoffs quite comfortably as well. It didn't seem that they had close games, but they didn't really ever look like losing the games that they were playing in. Especially the final, they just sat up well and won that game with relative ease. Do I think? I just think there's better, and I'm basing it off as well because obviously he has been in the Championship for a fair few years as well, and he didn't exactly set the world alight. He's just multiple jobs with different clubs. None of them he was particularly impressive with. I can't see Charlton being a threat to anyone higher up the table this season. I think they will really struggle. But as I said, if he can get the teams to set up like he did in League One and just be a difficult team to beat, that's more than what most relegated teams do in this division because they all half-time just get absolutely battered every week and end up going straight back down. So it could be one of the first seasons we don't see. I mean, obviously, I can't see any million years where you or Wrexham are in the relegation zone. But Charlton are probably the main threat to go down again. But for me, yeah, I just don't think he's better than who I've put above him, who we'll get onto in a minute. So next up, Frank Lampard. And I think, it's pretty similar. We've gone with 9th for me and 11th for you. I mean, I'll let you give your reasons for your 11th first and I'll get into mine.
I found Lampard quite hard to place. I think... I really undenied where to put him, and I think actually middle of the pack is probably the safest place to put him because I don't think I don't know because he's simply like quite inexperienced. Like he had that time at Derby, but then you look at that Derby squad and what those players went on to do, and you're like, actually, maybe getting to the playoffs and losing was a bit of an underachievement. And then obviously he didn't do all that well at Chelsea. He was okay at Everton. And he came to Coventry, and I think he was sort of unfairly tarred with that. Oh yeah, he's like Gerrard and Rooney brush when nobody's as bad as Wayne Rooney. So and Lampard's certainly better. Like Lampard is not of that ilk, but I don't know yet if he's a top half manager or a middle of the pack manager, or if he's slightly worse than that. I will say Coventry don't tend to make terrible decisions when it comes to managers, so if they like him, then they probably see something that the rest of us don't. which is why I'm a little bit. That's why I put him in the top half. I was like, okay, Coventry like him. They ended the season pretty well. He's probably quite good, but I'm not. This one I'm really not certain on. Let's say that.
For me, it was experience alone with Lampard. Someone who's managed Chelsea, he's got to be at least a half decent manager, because you don't just get handed jobs like that for no reason at all. I think as well last season, obviously, he dragged Coventry from what looked like a weird situation where they were nearly battling relegation to playoffs again, obviously losing out to Sunderland, who eventually went on to get promoted anyway. Isn't exactly the worst thing to say you did when you came in. The club were, I believe, near the bottom of the table when he got the job. So I think they were at bottom for quite a while under Mark Robins when he got sacked eventually. But everyone criticised that. But then Lampard came in, did what I said. Derby was a weird one. That team was brilliant when you look at it on paper. Tamori, Wilson, etc.
Mason Mount as well.
Yeah, it's a team that probably should have been promoted that season and didn't. You see that with a lot of teams. So there is question marks with Lampard. As you said, he's not been, I wouldn't say particularly impressive massively, but I think he's done well at the jobs he's been given. Obviously, Chelsea's just not a great job to have in general.
Yeah.
So it's hard to succeed there. Everton was always going to be difficult, especially playing the way that he wants to play. But he came in at Coventry. He did a good job. So for me, I think that's why I put him in the top half, because I look below him and I think, is there any managers I'm convinced now are better than him, or would I rather have? And there's not many below him who I'd say, yeah, I'd probably take them over Lampard. So that's why I've got him in ninth in the 10.
I think if you're basing Lampard just off last season, we'd both have him higher. It's just I have concerns from what happened before. That's all it is. Yeah. I think based on last season, he's a fantastic manager.
I think most people will agree with you. Next up, John Eustace, and it's the opener of my top 3, but you've got him a bit further down. A bit of a similar situation to Chris Davis here. I've got him in 3rd, and you've got him in 7th. So, I mean, it's not a massive gap, but obviously, for me putting the top 3, I will start with this one. It's hard to not rate John Eustace for the jobs he managed to do with very little is a sort of helm to be able to do with it. Blackburn, it was insane that they were even in the position that they were in, as proven when he left how badly they fell off. And then, it comes to Derby and he pulls them out of the relegation battle as well and keeps them safe. I just think he's a brilliant manager. He's got great ideas. He truly one of the only managers I can say in this division who I know will get the best out of the players that he has at Derby, as he proved last season with both them and Blackburn. Yeah, I just don't have many criticisms for John Eustace. I think there is some sort of worries that maybe there's a reason he hasn't got the top jobs yet. There's a reason he's still in the Championship, which is, I assume, why one of the reasons you would have put him in 7th. But for me, I just really like him, and I think there is potential that Derby squad, if they had some better players, to really be challenging under John Eustace.
I think he's a very good manager who. My concern with Eustace is what he would do with a lot of money, and there's probably a reason that teams that hire him are the ones who are struggling with money. He's very, very good with limited funds. I don't know how well his style of play would translate to more money. I know some the people are going to point out, oh, you're a Birmingham fan, Eustace had you sit, whatever. I'm not going to do that whole thing because I think we were in a pretty false position at that point when we sacked him. We shouldn't have sacked him, but we wouldn't have gone down if Mowbray hadn't got sick either. So I'm not going to get into it, but Eustace was good for us. I don't think at the time anyone would have called him the 3rd best manager in the division, but then you see what he's done with Blackburn. It's hard to argue against him. I think if I was doing this again, I'd maybe bump him a point or 2 higher. Thinking now that I'm sort of saying it out loud, but yeah, I think he's probably better than who I've got in 6th. But
I mean, it's the nature of the ranking videos, Steve. So we did this yesterday. So
yesterday, and my mind's already changed.
When you think about it, especially when you're speaking about it with someone else, I suppose it definitely will change your mind of it. But yeah, I sort of agree with your point with the whole. Obviously, they spent a lot of money on Aguiman as well from Charlotte, so that's probably the most money that he's had spent on a player in probably his entire managerial career. I can't think of anyone who's gone for more money than that. So Derby certainly are backing him, so we'll soon find out if it was the right decision. But yeah, for me it's 3rd, and for you it is 7th.
I wouldn't swap him for Chris Davis. No,
okay, there you go. Next up, Hull City, and a massive unknown who we've sort of ranked accordingly, really, is Sergei Yakirovich. And you've got him in 17th. I've got him in 19th. I mean, you could start on this one, but fair to say there's not too much to know about him. It's definitely not in English football anyway. There is nothing.
Yeah, this is one that's a massive unknown. You can look you look through his record, and he's managed big clubs in other countries, and it's like he's done pretty well at them, but like probably about as well as expected. I have him higher than you because I sort of see the vision, as it were. Like I can see the world where this is like an inspired appointment. Like I can see the world where he's like Marco Silva, where they've signed him from a big club in another league, and he's just like a top class manager because of that experience. But I can also see the world where he's awful, which I think is more where you're leaning towards, because he's such a gamble.
My worry is more with Hull and their record of appointing managers not being great.
Yeah, that's fair.
I do kind of agree, and I if I did this again, I don't know if I put him higher. The only reason I put him 19th was more on the unknown factor of it, as he's not managing this level before. But then again, there's people you'll see who I put above him who have way less managerial experience in general than he does. But he has got a 60% win rate at practically all of the clubs he's managed at, bar his last one in Turkey. But even then, he dragged them out of what looked like a destined relegation fight to safety. So you can't really argue too much against his record outside of Hull. It's just the unknown of English football, and Hull's track record of recent appointments has not been good. And especially when they go from Turkish league, especially with players and managers, we've sort of seen this pattern now with their chairman obviously being very familiar with that sort of thing, that they're going to go in that direction. And it's understandable. It's, you're going to go what you trust, but hasn't really worked in the last couple of years, it's safe to say. Liam Rosenior was the big break and they got rid of him. Sellers didn't work. So now you go with Jakirovic. It's a massive unknown, but as you said, I see what they've seen in him, if that makes sense. I don't think it's just a random appointment. I don't really understand any of it. Like maybe Tim Walter, for example, I didn't really get that one. But this one I sort of see it a bit more, but I think for me I've just leaned more on the unknown fact why he's fallen into 19th.
Yeah, I think there's enough unknowns that I'd be less excited to have in charge.
Yeah. I think, again, it could come to the end of the season and this could look really stupid and they could drag Hull away up the table, or they could end up in the relegation battle where most people expect them to be. So we'll soon find out. Moving on. A joint first place, and not much to say about it, really, because it's pretty much, you set in stone. Kieran McKenna, we've both given him as our best manager in the Championship. And I mean, I don't know about you, Elliott, but for me, it was a pretty easy decision.
Yeah, this was... I think on the list, this was the only one I was certain. Yeah, maybe 24, and even then I ummed and ahed. Like this was the only one I was actually certain. I looked at the list, I was like, in fact, doing this, I put it into 4 lists. I had great, good, question mark, bad. McKenna's the only one. His proven track record. I think Ipswich were, of the 3 promoted teams, clearly the best in the Premier League last year. They were the best team in the Championship. Like, they just... What he's done is an incredible job. The fact that he's still at Ipswich is such a boon for the club. It's really hard to imagine Ipswich not going back up with Kieran McKenna in charge. And I think that speaks volumes as to how good he is.
I mean, if you're talking about a manager who gets the best out of what he's got, then this is the literal definition. This should be where you look up that in the dictionary, that Kieran McKenna's name should pop up, because the fact they went up when they did was sort of insane to everyone. I don't think anyone saw it coming. I think most people sort of saw them as like a stability team, just stable in the Championship, and then next season they maybe push up a bit higher. But Kieran McKenna comes in and says, nope, we're going for promotion, and they end up in the automatics and straight into the Premier League, where I wouldn't say they gave a bad account of themselves either. They were probably the best, as much as I think they finished 19th in the end, but I'd argue they were a bit more impressive to watch.
Oh, yeah, Leicester. Definitely. Like, given the resources as well, and just when you watch I tried not to watch Leicester play as much as possible. And you watch Southampton play, and it's like they basically gave up. Like they didn't give up, but they tried to play the same style, even knowing it wasn't working. Or I think Ipswich actually gave it a go and scared the willies out of some big teams. Like they looked more like a Premier League team than either Southampton or Leicester last year. And I think they might do the same this year as well.
I just think he's absolutely brilliant, and the fact he's still at Ipswich is a mystery to me, because I think any club would be genuinely lucky to have the bloke, because there is so much quality there, and there is no coincidence they looked so good in the Championship, and then were even a solid account of themselves in the Premier League, as much as the points tally may not reflect it. I think, as I said, there is a really very few worlds where I can't see them at the top two of the table by the end of the season come May. I just think he gets the absolute best out of his players. No one saw that team on paper as a promotion side when they went up, I don't think. He's getting promoted with players who maybe not really had much of a career outside the bottom end of the Championship or League One, and all of a sudden they're Championship superstars. I think obviously with that Amari Hutchinson sale coming in as well, Delap gone could throw some concerns, but the money they're getting for both of them players, I'm sure they'll be able to replace them fairly well, because he's a talent ID as well. He seems to bring in only quality players. You don't see many bad players going to Ipswich. So I think for both of us, it was a fairly quick and easy decision to put. I think, as you said, it's the only one I was really certain about was this.
Yeah. I think you could argue, like, I could be convinced to change it, pretty much any of the others, but there's no way you'd convince me McKenna.
Yeah, no, I think there's quite a gap between first and second place, which we'll get onto later on in the video, but definitely for me, Kieran McKenna is number one. Moving on to a bit more of a mid-table one, we have Leicester with Martí Cifuentes. So obviously a new appointment, was at QPR beforehand, now at Leicester, and fairly similar from both of us, 13th for me, 15th for you. Again,
just not excited.
Too much to know as well.
Yeah, I'm just not excited about this. I think he was decent but unexciting at QPR, and outside of that, there's nothing that like screams like this is a guy I want in charge of my football team. And again, like the same thing you said with Hull, and the opposite of what we said with Coventry, I sort of don't trust Leicester when their last appointment was Ruud van Nistelrooy. They've lost any goodwill they might have had when it comes to like finding a manager now. Like I just don't trust them. I'm not sure he's that good. I'm just not excited by this at all.
I mean, I kind of feel that this was clutching at straws because no one would take the job because of the issues that they have going on off the pitch. So they went for the best option that would actually go for it. You look at people like Gary O'Neill and stuff where they were interested, you think will probably do a better job, especially with that Leicester team. But Cifuentes was a weird one for me. Obviously at QPR, there was a spell where they looked really, really good, and there was a lot of potential and high stakes on QPR. But then they sort of just regressed and ended up back where they normally end up in that mid-table sort of bracket. So for me, it's a weird one. I don't really know. As you said, it doesn't really excite me from a Leicester perspective as a team. If you want to be challenging for the title, as I imagine, you're all going to hope you do again, because last time you came down straight back up with relative ease. I think this time it's going to be a lot more difficult, obviously with off the pitch issues as well. You're going to have to sell a lot of players before you can buy any, if you even can buy any players. I don't know exactly what the situation is. I know points deduction is likely. So yeah, as you said, it just doesn't really get me off my seat, especially a Leicester fan. You'd imagine they'd look for a more high-profile name. This was a team that won the Premier League 10 years ago, and now we're looking at this. So, yeah, I'm not sure on this one.
No, I don't really get it. Again, that could be my ignorance.
No, as I said, I've watched by QPR multiple times as Cifuentes, and it's just like they were good at times. Other times, just relatively easy game, 3 points done, didn't really think too much about it. I see the vision in a way, QPR fans did like him, he did have potential, but potential's not really something you can rely on as a Leicester fan. You sort of need someone who's going to win you games now, like they did beforehand, and every other time they've been going up and down, whatever. So yeah, for me, not too sure on this one. Next up, and another agreement exactly, is Rob Edwards in 20th. Now, if you put this on our screen,
I thought I might have been undershooting, so I'm glad to see you.
Yeah, I mean, if you showed us this 2-3 years ago, you probably wouldn't think, "What on earth are you talking about?"
Yeah.
But nowadays, maybe not. I mean,
I think he's almost been found out.
But
I think he's been found out. I think obviously the Luton promotion was. I don't want to take too much away from them. I think they were running very, very hot that season. You sort of look at their numbers, you're like, yeah, you got. I don't want to say lucky because you make your own luck, whatever. But they ran very hot that year. they had a miracle run. They got to the Premier League, and then they had all this money that they got from the Premier League. They invested into the club, and that's when it all fell apart. And it happens to a lot of managers who are very, very good on a budget, that when they get money, they just sort of don't know. They don't really know how to reinvent themselves. I think the fact that Luton played such a physical, overpowering style, sort of, it doesn't always translate well when you got better players. Like, what are they going to do? Kick it further? You know what I mean? Like, it's almost a waste of better players, and I think it works really well for the players Luton had at the time. But I don't think I don't know if he's one-dimensional, but it sort of seemed that way at Luton. We'll see. Like, Middlesbrough have worked miracles before, and maybe we're being completely unfair, and actually that first spell at Luton where they got them promoted is his real level, but I think it's more likely to be the other way around.
You pretty much just said it. I'm not sure. As you said, if you said it a couple of years ago, you would have thought, what are you on about? You just got Luton promoted to the Premier League, which no one saw coming, I don't think. But at the same time, weren't great in the Premier League. Weren't bad by any accounts, but weren't great. But everyone thought, all right, they'll be fine. They'll just bounce straight back up. Team will look pretty good for the Championship. Lost players, didn't really replace them, and the style didn't really translate. They got found out fairly quickly, as you said, and they've now been relegated to League One, mostly because of his mistakes early in the season. You think, put him in a situation where it was pretty much unescapable for whoever took the job. Yeah, again, if you said a couple of years ago, you also wouldn't believe that Borough would sack Carrick either. So it's a weird one. I think going from Carrick to Rob Edwards is certainly an interesting change. I get, obviously, you don't want to repeat what happened with Carrick because you sacked him for a reason, but at the same time, I don't think it was all too bad what Carrick did for them. I don't think they're the perennial top six club that they think they are at times. Not saying they're not near it, but I just don't think they're quite at the level of certain teams, or especially last season when you played against them. As far as what we did anyway, I just wasn't convinced with them anytime we played against them. So I don't really get the appointment from a Borough perspective. I don't think he's a very Middlesbrough manager, especially going off Michael Carrick from last time. But again, we could be proven wrong. It could be harsh. Yeah. I think Borough fans will probably think it's quite harsh. But again, you're basing it off what we've seen, and recently we haven't seen anything particularly impressive from Rob Edwards. So for both of us, he falls into 20th place.
Again, I think the fact that he's 20th suggests that the league's actually quite strong for managers. Like, I got down to like 16, 17 before I was like, actually, I don't think this guy's not great. Like, or I wouldn't want him. And even then, I was like, half of those, like, I don't know. They might.
I don't think anyone, like I said, like people like Ismail being that low down as well. It's like, it shows that there are good managers in this league, because in most other leagues that would probably be like, you're one of the better. Like, even if you drop down a league, for example, to League One, Ismail really League One is like one of the best managers. So I don't think anyone's particularly bad in this division. It's just in comparison to everyone else, I would not rather have Rob Edwards than the people above him on my list anyway.
Yeah,
and I'm assuming that's what you've gone off. Moving on to, this is one that we saw online that caused a bit of a stir when he got ranked really high. Is Alex Neil. I believe it was second tier, put him in fifth. Safe to say we haven't followed suit, but not to his discredit. We've both just sort of stuck him in the middle, and I think that's, for a perennial Championship journeyman, it's probably fair.
Yeah, like, I think he might be better than I think. Like, he's it's really hard to, like, some jobs he's done really well, and other jobs he just sort of existed. He's never really done terribly, so I think maybe I should probably have him a little bit higher, because it's hard to not do a bad job. Like, it's hard to go your whole career without doing a terrible job at some point, and I think he's pretty much succeeded at that. But I also, I sort of look at it, I'm like, if he was the manager of my team, how happy would I be? And I'd be like, yeah, I'd probably be happy with all of the people I put above him. I don't know. Like, again, like, at times he can be like a top 5 manager in the league. Like, he's been promoted from this division before. Like, at times he can be that good. I just don't think he's consistently that good. And I also don't think Millwall, I don't think they're likely to break into the top 6 this year. I just don't see it, and I think they'll be a mid-table club. I think Alex Neil is sort of around that level as well.
Yeah, I don't dislike Alex Neil. I think he's a good manager. I mean, I wouldn't put him 11th for no reason. I could sort of see the arguments for putting him a bit higher. I just, he did really well with Millwall last season. If we're just going off that, last season he was really good. They were very much in the playoff race until I believe it was the last day where they threw it away, unfortunately. But at the same time, it's like, as you see him putting in top five, for example, I'm not entirely sure about that one either. He's a good manager, as I said, but I think he's just 11th place just screams Alex Neil to me, just in the
Yeah,
middle,
I think it
in
had
and
to be
about the
between like
playoff
14 and
spots.
10.
Yeah, in and about the playoff spots, not really challenging, nowhere near the drop, just in the middle. And it pretty much sums up Alex Neil. He's just an average championship manager, which isn't a bad thing. It's hard to find managers who are just steady and will keep you steady.
Yeah,
And, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And I don't dislike him. I think he's a good manager. But I think, as I said, into the top 10, I'd much rather have people in the top 10 than I would rather have Alex Neil at my football club.
yeah,
So for me, it was fairly average for Alex Neil. We both put him in and about that sort of middle of the table range. So 11 for me
yeah.
and 14 for you seems about fair, I think. Next up, and a bit higher up the list, we go now with Liam Manning. Number 3 for you, number 5 for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, top 3, so I'll let you start because, it's quite a big statement to put someone in your top 3.
I think that Bristol City squad was great. Like, I don't think I just looked at that squad and I'm like, that is not a squad I would expect to be anywhere near the playoffs. And then I watched them play, and it's like, yeah, no, this guy, he knows what he's doing. The way they played, nice to watch. It's a very modern style of football, and I think a lot of people know what I mean by that. Like it's that high press, high intensity. I like that style of play. I think it's really nice to watch, and it's pretty effective when done well. And going from Bristol City, who I don't think their squad was that good, to what I think is a better squad at Norwich, even with the outgoings, like I think that's a better squad. I think Norwich are a real threat this year for like they're definitely like playoffs, and you never know. But like once you're in the playoffs, you just never know. I think Liam Manning is an excellent manager. I'd be surprised if Norwich weren't in the top six.
Yeah, as I've put him fifth. I think he's a really good manager. We saw it basically his entire managerial career. He's just moved progressively further up. But last season was obviously the shining light, taking a team that has just been mid-table, mid-table, mid-table for the last decade in this division. Just have struggled moving anywhere up or down. They've just sat there.
Yeah,
There was obviously that whole meme with them being 12th, Preston being 13th, and it was just how it was, and it happened every year. But they broke the theme, took them to sixth, and obviously was unfortunately for them the worst team in playoff history with that loss to Sheffield United. But yeah, I don't think there's anything to be ashamed about because they probably shouldn't have been there in the first place. So it's credit to
no,
Liam Manning that they even got there to begin with. I think he's a brilliant manager, and I think my only worry with Liam Manning is will the transition to Norwich work in the way that he hopes it will, because he's not really had a squad capable of challenging, really at the top. And as I said, last season, I think it was a massive overachievement for Bristol City. So now he's got a team that's probably, you got owners who are expecting you now to be pushing top six with the money that they're spending on it. It's a team that you're going to want to do well with. And I think we'll soon find out if you can do that with the much better quality of players. But I don't have too much worry about it. I think it's a good appointment for Norwich. There's many different directions they could have gone. I think they've gone the right way here, getting a championship experienced manager who literally has just come off a playoff campaign with a team much worse than you. So you think if he does it with them, probably should be able to do it with us as well. So I think both of us top five. I don't think there'll be too much disagreement with this from the comments, but obviously you'll have everyone who has an opinion who probably think he's rubbish.
I'm just trying to get on the train early because I'm pretty sure he's going to the Premier League. And I'm trying to get on that train early so I can like come back to this video in a year's time and be like, look, I knew how good he was. And if he's not, then I could just like forget this video ever existed. It's fine.
Yeah, a win-win situation for both of us to either look absolute geniuses or absolute idiots, which seems to be the case for most people who do predictions of any kind. So we'll move on quick before we do that. Next up, very much in the middle again, Gary Rowett of Oxford.
Gary
12th
Rowett's
for me.
always in the middle. It doesn't matter.
Again, a bit like Alex Neil, really, you'd have to say. Just bang in the middle.
So what I'd like to say about Rowett is I put him at 10th, but it very much depends on who your team is. I think for a team with a limited budget, he is a top 5 manager. Like if you don't have a lot of money and you're trying to survive, there are very, very few better managers than Gary Rowett in this division. However, if you want to finish higher than like 11th, there's quite a few better managers than Gary Rowett. Like, he is a manager with a ceiling, but he is very, very good at what he does. It's just that he doesn't know how. I think he still hasn't figured out how to play against teams who sit back, which is fine when you're, I don't want to say when you're Oxford, because I actually think Oxford are pretty good and they've got decent players, they spend money, but like, teams are going to come to Oxford and try and attack them. Teams, like the bigger teams in the division, are going to try and attack Oxford. Rowett's always been very, very good against good teams who will attack him. He's always struggled against teams at the bottom of the division, which is why actually in a relegation battle, he will get you points that you wouldn't get with other managers. And he will nearly always keep you up. He didn't keep us up at the end of season before last, but he will nearly always keep you up. If you have him for the full season, he will keep you up. So for that, like, you can argue he's much higher or much lower depending on the team you're managing. If it was Ipswich, I would not have him 10.
Yeah,
I can tell you that much.
I think as far as a manager that suits the team that they manage, he's probably at the top end. It's just a manager who will give you stability in this division for the most part, as you said, obviously. Yeah. But over a full season, you'd imagine you probably wouldn't have gone down if you had him the entire time. So
it would have been miserable as well.
Yeah, it's not like it's not great football to watch by any means. You can't say he's an entertaining manager with loads of potential. As you said, his ceiling is probably just a mid-table Championship manager, but a club at Oxford, you'll take that all day long. That's what you want, just to stay in this division now. You've got in, so you don't want to go back down to League One. So for me, he's just good at what he does, as you said. He comes in to stabilise teams and put them into the middle of the table, happy days. And then maybe if you're looking to be a bit more ambitious in a couple of years' time, then you go get someone else who's got a bit of a high ceiling, maybe to play a bit more exciting attacking football. But for suiting a team like Oxford, he's done it with basically every team he's been at. You can't really complain too much with the Gary Rowett, just as I put him 12th, quite literally smack bang in the middle of the table. Just your bang average manager who's just exactly what you want as a team like Oxford, I think.
Yep.
So moving on to another top sort of 7 manager, we have John Mousinho of Portsmouth. And I've gone 6th, you've gone 5th, so fairly similar on this one again. There's not too many big disagreements here. There is some, which we'll get onto quite shortly, but for this one, fairly similar. He did a really good job and has done since he come into Portsmouth with a team that doesn't look great.
Yeah. One of those I think before we hired Chris Davis, there were a lot of Blues fans who wanted us to have Mousinho because of the job he'd done, and he's gone up a level and continued to impress, which is not easy to do. And as you say, it's with a team that isn't really expected to be, like, a lot of people had them as a bottom sort of 6 team, and they were quite comfortably clear of relegation last year. I mean, it's really hard to it's really hard to argue against him outside of like, oh, what if he went to another club? Like that's the only thing you sort of level against him. I know I've done with like some of the other managers as well. It's like, you look at the job he's done at Portsmouth, there's basically no criticism to make. Like he just seems like an excellent manager.
He's done exactly what he would have been asked to do, and is you get them out the division and then you keep them in the division. And he did it, as you said, with relative ease. There wasn't too much danger of them going down at any point during the season, really. And obviously I went to Portsmouth this season, the Swansea friendly. They beat us 4-0, and they really played us off the park in a point where we were on a really good run of form, and they really just didn't fear us or anything. They came straight to it and absolutely battered us. They were brilliant at Fratton Park. I think it was away where their struggles came, very little points away from home. But as a team like Portsmouth in this division, it's sort of understandable. But if you win your home games, which is what you did, you'll stay in this division. And they did with quite easy comfort. So it's not a team that you expect to be challenged at the higher up the table. So he came in, did his job. And I think if he did go to another club, I still think he'd be as brilliant with, if he had more funds, I'd argue beat a team much higher at the table that would be challenging for promotion. And he wouldn't look out of place, I don't think.
Yeah, it's one of those you don't know until it happens, but until then, it's hard not to rate him. But then maybe I should have rated Eustace higher in that case.
Well, again, this may look really stupid a few months when somebody put in 3rd has been sacked and somebody put in 20 seconds, put a team on top of the table. So you never know. But just off what we think right now. So we've got Mousinho fairly similar in 6th and 5th. Moving on to Preston, and I feel like this is our first big sort of not massive disagreement, but obviously you've got him in the bottom three, Paul Heckingbottom of Preston. So I've got a feeling you'll cause some unrest for this one. So I'm just going to let you start.
Yeah, again, it's a case of where I looked at the managers and I don't think there's many bad ones. And I just think I'd rather have nearly any other manager in the league over him. I think Preston, as you mentioned earlier, like are always a mid-table team. I think last year they were a little bit disappointing. Just underwhelming. And Preston have always been a really difficult team for Birmingham Blues to beat. Like we've always struggled against them. So I think I've always thought Preston were probably better than they were, but they've always been a really difficult team to beat. And I think last year they just weren't that difficult to beat. They weren't. They didn't look like the Preston teams I've gotten used to watching, and I don't think Heckingbottom was particularly good elsewhere either. I just think there's so many other managers I'd rather have over Heckingbottom. Somebody had to be bottom three, and I didn't want to put anyone I had never seen manage before because, like, maybe they're quite good, whereas Heckingbottom, I'm pretty sure, isn't that good.
I sort of disagree. You know, I don't think he's as bad as you think he is. I think the job he did at Preston, considering the place they were in, he sort of brought them up and he gave them a bit more optimism. And if you ask most Preston fans, they seem to like him. And I've sort of looked into it because, you know, the fans might say they like him, whatever, whereas Preston, the standards aren't exactly flying up high the table. So, you know, you don't expect much. But again, he wasn't bad. You know, this is a manager with experience. You know, Sheffield United. He's just said, I've put him in the middle of the table. I think he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. There's nothing offensive. I just don't think he's that bad. I think he will do a job with Preston. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, they probably will be in their normal sort of anywhere from 10th to 14th again. But I think they'll be comfortable this season compared to last year where they struggled a bit. You know, it's not a brilliant squad, but it's a good enough squad to be in that middle of the table. And I think there will be signs in the season where people think it all happens in quite a few seasons with Preston where they start off really well and thinking this is finally the time they break the curse and they move into the playoffs. But after a while, they sort of regress and they end up in the mid-table again. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them signs under Heckingbottom. I think there's certain potential for him to do a good job there. I put him in the middle because there's concerns. He's not done amazingly everywhere else, so I'm not going to put him much higher than this. But I don't think
I just find him like aggressively unexciting. I probably put him too low realistically, but like I just sort of like I'd just sort of rather take, especially if I'm Preston or I'm just used to sort of being in mid-table. I'd rather take a gamble on somebody completely I'd maybe this will completely backfire. I would rather have Jakurovic because at least I don't know yet. Like maybe he's a really good manager and he shoots up the table. Like I don't see the world where Heckingbottom elevates Preston, which I guess is kind of. I think Preston needs somebody who's just going to push them another level. That's how I've always. Preston have always been pretty close, but not there, and they just need somebody to push them up a level. And I guess the reason I'm so low on Heckingbottom is he just feels like a floor raiser rather than a ceiling raiser for a team that didn't really need that. I guess he's probably better than this. It's just like. I just find it so uninspiring.
Well, we'll soon find out, as with most of these. But I think that's the first time we've had a sort of disagreement in the position of teams managers. I think we had to talk about it a bit more than the other ones. But we will move on to Queen's Park Rangers, and another one we've put fairly high up the table here. Julian Stefan, coming from, I mean, it was obviously between his jobs in France, was unemployed for a bit of time, but now he's taking a job at QPR, taking over from Martí Cifuentes. And 8th place for a manager who's never managed in the Championship. He's got to have quite a decent resume there.
Yeah, I think this is, again, another one that could backfire, but I think this is quite ambitious, actually, from QPR. You look at the jobs he's done in France, and they're actually pretty solid. Like, he won a French Cup, I believe. Was it Strasbourg? He won, I'm pretty sure he won a cup in France. Was it with Rennes?
He also got Strasbourg into the European places as well.
Yeah, which is like, I know people like to rag on the French league. It's not as bad a standard as people think. It's still probably like the 5th best league in Europe. He's done an excellent job there and produces a lot of good managers as well. The concern obviously would be that he was sacked despite these things, like a couple of times. Like why isn't he still the manager of Rennes? And I think they had a bit of a mid-season collapse last year. They signed a whole bunch of players. I think the director of football signed a whole bunch of players. None of them really worked, and things kind of went to pot. But I looked at his resume. I looked at the French fans were saying about him, and I'm like, this is an ambitious signing. Like, this is an ambitious managerial recruitment. I would be very excited if my team were looking for a manager and they came up with the name Julian Stefan, and I looked him up. I'd be like, yeah, I'm excited. I'm on board with this. Like, I would be. That's kind of how I sort of looked at it. It's like, how excited would I be for this guy to be my manager? Yeah, even as an unknown, I'd be pretty excited.
Yeah. My only concern with Stefan is his last season with Strasbourg, where he was sacked with the club in 19th position. I understand the challenges of playing in Europe, and the league can be different. We saw it with Spurs this season, obviously, as far as from an English perspective. But it's worrying to see that dramatic of a fall off from a team you've put them in. I believe it was 6th in Liga to 19th within a couple of months. It's quite a dramatic fall from grace, I think. So that's my big worry with Stefan. That's not a great thing to sort of come into this job on. I think he had a little spell around as well as a caretaker or something. But that's the main thing he's coming into this job off, is a pretty big disappointment and a sacking. So that is my big worry. But obviously, there's been so much talent passed through that sort of Rennes. If you look at some of the players he had at Rennes, Desiree Doué, just to point a name out. If you look into the career he's now gone on to have, you can sort of see alignments to players in that QPR squad as to why they bring him in. They've got exciting young wingers, just brought in Kwame Poku from Peterborough, you've got Karamoku Dembele. You've still got Elias Chair, who's always been an exciting player to watch when he's on it. So, it's a young team with a lot of excitement and potential about it. So I sort of see the vision as to why they've done it. I put him 10th as more of a conservative pick. I still think he's, on paper, he's like a really good manager. There is obviously the unknown factor of he's not managed in England before, so you don't know what you're going to get. But as you said, it's an ambitious appointment. You've gone for a manager who's put a team into Europe in a pretty high standard of a league. My only concern is that sacking, and as to how well do you bounce back from such a pretty dramatic fall off and failure compared to a season where you were absolutely brilliant with a team that's been in a bit of a struggle for many years now. You've got to try and bring them out of this slump. He's got the players to do it, so I think it's going to be they could be really exciting and pushing that top 6, or they could be a massive disappointment. So that's why
it could go horribly wrong, but I'd be excited.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Next up, Ruben Sellers of Sheffield United. This was an appointment that sort of baffled me in a way. I just because I don't know coming off the season where he had, would I have taken him to Sheffield United? I've got him 16th. You've gone from one mid-table. I suppose there's a slight disagreement. You've got him into the top half. I'm leaning more into the bottom half.
I think he's done pretty reasonable jobs everywhere he's been. I think it's a weird appointment for Sheffield United. I do agree with that. But I think generally, he's a pretty decent manager. Like, I think, look at his record, I'd be like, yeah, I'm pretty confident he's a good manager at this level. It's a weird one for Sheffield United to make, because I think it's similar to Sheff Wednesday, where it's like, I would have thought it's an unexciting one for a team that you'd imagine pushing for top 4.
Yeah.
Playoffs at least. It's like, why have you gone for this guy? But I think he's a good manager, so I thought I'll just put him. I think the two, he's between, for me, he's above Alex Neil and below Frank Lampard. I think that's kind of seems about right to me. That seemed like the right place for him.
Yeah, I'm just talking more like him at Sheffield United. I just think they're probably better than Ruben Sellers. He's coming off a pretty poor season. I'm not saying obviously it was Hull and there was their issues there, granted, but it's a poor season with Hull. But then you obviously look at Reading, he did a really good job. Go to Southampton, maybe not. So it's been an up and down career for Sellers so far in management, you have to say. So I was a bit surprised when I saw Ruben Sellers Sheffield United, because if you asked me this video to rank Chris Wilder, he'd probably be near the top, whereas I got Sellers in 16th. So I'm not entirely sure he's a better manager than Chris Wilder. And obviously when you sack someone like Chris Wilder, you want to replace him with someone better. So I wasn't entirely sure of that whole situation. I think there's potential, and I could look back on this and it could end up being really stupid by the end of the season, because he's going to have a brilliant squad to inherit compared to Hull, where it was a bit terrible. But
yeah, I think that's the point. That whole squad was not great, and he did keep them up. Okay, they had their issues, but I think keeping them up was not that. it's not that squad's peak by any stretch of the imagination, but like it's not a failure to keep that whole team up because I don't think that whole team was great, and I think he did well to sort of right the ship and keep them up. As you say, he was good at Reading. I'm pretty confident he's a decent manager, if not like a great one. I think having him 16th because he's a bad fit for Sheffield United is fair. Like I do think he's a strange fit for Sheffield United, but if I was just sort of ranking him, I'd be like, yeah, no, I think I'd have him slightly higher than that.
Yeah, I've just got my concerns with Reece. It's just topsy turvy. I think if you asked me when he was at Reading, I would have put him a lot higher than after that season with Hull. Obviously, as you said, wasn't too much he could do. His style doesn't really fit a team battling on the bottom of the table. You obviously saw at Reading they were better towards the top half, but it's an interesting one. So I guess we will soon find out. And next up, this is one where the manager doesn't really match the quality of the team because if you ask people what they think of Danny Roll, as we've put here, 4th and 6th, pretty highly. You ask people what Sheff Wednesday are going to do this season, and pretty much everyone will tell you they're going to go down. But this is probably the first manager I've seen where he is far too good to be at the club he is at and to be dealing with the situation that he has to deal with, because I think he's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, really hard to argue with any of those words. He's done an excellent job with a team that has not supported him basically in any way and are continuing to not do so. And it's genuinely just a shame to see him at Sheffield Wednesday, for being honest. It's a real shame for him. He's better than that.
Yeah, I put him 4th, so there's got to be something behind it. But as you said, that team is bad. Like, it's not great at all. He's had no backing from a chairman who is just so disinterested in this football club and is looking more or less happy just to let it die. He's now got a 3-window embargo to deal with. He's got players on handing their notice in because he's not been paid. I doubt he's even been paid for a number of months either. Their best players only got paid to get rid of them for a fee, as we saw with Gassama going to Rangers. Sorry.
Rangers, yeah.
But yeah, I think he's a brilliant manager, and I am very surprised there weren't clubs higher up the table, even maybe like a Leicester who didn't look at this guy and think, yeah.
I was just thinking that, yeah, like maybe he's just like he loves Sheffield Wednesday. Maybe he's like he loves the fans, like they've taken to him and he just likes that. Like that it does happen where like a guy comes over and he's just so adored by the club that he's just like, yeah, this is my club now.
I honestly respect the loyalty because most managers wouldn't have had it, especially knowing his quality and knowing how good he is. But I would be very, very surprised if he's at this football club for much longer, especially knowing they'll probably just sack him if they end up in the bottom half. But I think bottom 3, sorry. But I just think I was a very shocked team at Leicester didn't go in this direction and bring him in to be their manager, to be honest, because I think the success rate with Roll could be the ceiling he has in management. I think is massive. And there is a reason he is this high up, despite Sheffield Wednesday being they finished mid-table, but that squad, that is a huge overachievement, I think, all things considered. So,
wouldn't disagree.
Both of us, 4th and 6th, very high on Danny Roll. Next up, another man we've agreed on is both of our number 2 is Will Still of Southampton, and it's arguably, you could say, a bit weird because obviously this is a man with no managerial experience in England, but going off what we've seen, we both agreed with it. I don't see much movement on this for myself.
I was surprised that you agreed with me because I thought like maybe I was sort of going a bit over the top. But like again, he's another one. You look at his record, you look at the teams he's managed, you look at the jobs he's done at those things. If he was manager of my football club, I'd be very, very excited. He seemingly has done a very, very good job everywhere he's gone. He's quite a young manager. This is a good squad for him to come and inherit. It's hard to see this not being a success based on the rest of his career. Like it just seems like it's. And the thing is, you put him at 2, and it's kind of hard to disprove this because Southampton probably will finish top 2 or top 6 at least. Like, so it's really hard. Like, you can just point to and go, yeah, look, he's in the top 6, and it's like he's going to have one of the best squads in the division. Anything other than probably like automatic would be failure, but I think they'll probably get automatic. I think Will Still is a very good manager. I can't say I've watched too much of his teams elsewhere, but there's a reason he was linked to all these big jobs in the past. It hasn't seemed to have gone completely off the rails in his career. I know he had some personal issues, which is why he's in England. I think his girlfriend has very severe illness, and he wanted to come back to England to be with her. So that's almost the reason Southampton have been able to get him out of France. He's by all accounts looks like a fantastic manager, even though he's a little bit of an unknown in the Championship. I don't really put too much stock in that because I think he's just a good manager and he'll be a good manager wherever he goes.
I mean, you took out words out of my mouth. It was just, there's a reason this man was linked to jobs like West Ham and stuff like that in the past. Yeah. He's a very good manager. You know, the potential is insane. He's very, very, I don't know how old exactly he is, but he's got to be the youngest manager in the division, I think, bar maybe a Ryan Mason. You know, this is a man who
Chris Davis is very young as well.
Is he?
He's about 40, I think. Yeah.
This is a man who's, you know, very, very early on in his managerial career to already be managing the teams that he has. It's quite incredible. Sort of came out of nowhere, I think, to everyone. Sort of just came up at Rams and like, hang on a minute, they're doing really well. Who's this guy? And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, okay, fair enough. As you said, I can't say I've watched all too much of Rams, but looking back on what I have seen and what, you know, just looking at his ideas and, you know, watching all the videos of like the coach's voice, stuff like that, I just think he looks brilliant to me. And it may be reactionary to put him in two, because you said there's no experience in England yet, but to manage a team like Rams, to do as well as you did there, to be linked with the Premier League, you don't just get that for no reason. And I think the potential for the Southampton team under him is massive, and I would be very surprised if they're not pushing promotion this season under his management. Next up, Mark Robins, and probably another slight disagreement, maybe. I've got him in 8th, you've got him in 13th. So a bit lower down for you than it is for me on Mark Robins' stocks.
Yeah, did an excellent job with Coventry, and then it started to go wrong, and I don't think he really knew how to fix things. I guess that's why, and I think the fact that he's taking the Stoke job is such a poison chalice that it's just going to ruin your stock anyway, and I think anyone who takes that job it's willingly jumping into the lion's den. I think 13th is still fine. Like he's just below. I've got him just below Lampard and Sells, which is, you know, Coventry improved under Lampard, so I'd hard to put him above Lampard, even though he did such a good job at first. I don't know if he can recreate that like lightning in a bottle with Stoke. I certainly don't think he can do it with Stoke. I don't know if he can do it with anyone at the moment. I think he's a good manager. I'm not like super high on him because of like how things transpired.
I think you've gone in a similar direction with this as I went with Sells and Sheffield United. It's the fit more than the manager. I sort of see your point. To me, I looked at the list and I thought, if there are people below him, would I rather have people like Lampard and manager? I'm not entirely sure. I think this is a man with so much experience at this level and good experience as well. You know, he's taken Coventry to the playoffs, brought them up the divisions, you know, was there for, I don't know how many years it was, but it was a very long time. Potentially unfairly sacked, obviously weren't doing great, but at the same time, you know, you can't argue too much against the decision with where they were and where their ambitions are at and what Lampard took them on to go and do. Would they have done it under Robins? I don't know. But, you know, I just think he's a really good manager, and I think with just the experience alone that he has over basically all of the managers in the division, I think it bumps him up massively on my list, so that's why I've put him in 8th. But I can sort of see your argument, especially with fit for the team. You know, Stoke's not a great job to have for anyone, so
yeah,
it'll be intriguing to see how he does.
Next year, you would have him lower just because he's had to manage Stoke, and that just seems to make every manager worse. I'm not really sure why. I don't know what is in the water in Stoke, but they just seem to like torpedo every manager's career. So I would not take that job.
Neither. Next up, my Swansea City, and we have agreed on this one. And no biases from me on this one. And I'll start as it's my team, and I should probably go into it. You know, we had a good end to last season under him. There's no denying it. You know, we came from Luke Williams, where we were bad in January. You know, didn't win a single game. We lost like 5-1 to Norwich, 4-0 to Portsmouth. You know, there were big losses in that run, and we needed some stability. First of all, to drag us out of the relegation battle, but second of all, to put us a bit higher up the table. We end up being 3 points off the playoffs with 2 games to go, and very much in the hunt after winning a lot of games, I believe. Since Sheehan took over in the league, obviously going off last season, it was only Leeds and Burnley had picked up more points than we did in that period of time, which, you know, that's no mean feat at all. My only worry is inexperience for one, but the record of caretakers taking over to permanent and it working is very, very low. We saw it with our neighbours, Cardiff, who did it with Omar Rizza, and look where they've ended up. So I'm not saying he's going to relegate us. I'm just unsure. And, this is a team now we've built with good players with a lot of potential. Ethan, bringing in Galbraith, Vidal into our midfield, Inusa out wide. We've brought in really good footballers, Cameron Burgess into defence. This is a team that sort of wants to win now. And I think for us, it's a risky decision to give that duty to someone who hasn't actually had all too much managerial experience at all.
Yeah, I'd almost just put a question mark for this. I had absolutely no idea where to place him. He's got such little experience as a manager. Yes, he ended the season really well. As you say, that doesn't really mean anything. We've seen so many cases of caretaker doing well, gets the job, does badly. Like it happens far too much. And I just think I had no idea where to place him. I put him above managers that I thought I really didn't like, and one other unknown still to come. And I was like, yeah, I think that's about as high as I'm willing to put him.
Yeah, I think it's just a big unknown. We'll find out. I'm just not entirely convinced that we should be trusting a team that looks really good on paper with someone with not all too much managerial experience and, more importantly, a caretaker, because there is also a lot of false sort of positives you get from caretaker managers where they look really good at the beginning and don't end up being too great. So it's certainly an interesting one to monitor. Next up, and for me, we finally hit the bottom with Paolo Pezzolano from Watford. And it might be harsh, but I've just gone over this guy's record, and I believe he's got a below 40% win rate at every club bar 2 in his managerial career so far. So I don't, as compared to Stefan, for example, or Ikirovic from Hull, I don't see the vision, and that's why, with no experience and not a particularly impressive CV, and Watford's track record of managers to add to that, that's why I have him bottom of the table. But again, it could be quite harsh because there are managers who have done this league and not done well. But for me, I just can't put him any higher than that.
Yeah, so you look at his record, obviously you say like, oh, he had this bad win rate via Valladolid, but he got relegated in La Liga and then got promoted back from the second division. So like there was some areas like, oh yeah, no, his win rate in the top division was bad, and then it was not great again in the lower leagues. And then when he got promoted, he got sacked after getting absolutely spanked by Atletico Madrid. Watford aren't playing against Atletico Madrid, so that's not a concern. I have no idea if this guy is a good manager or not, because most of his managerial record is in South America, where I'm not completely au fait with the level of play. Like, I don't know. He got promoted from like the second division of Brazil with Cruzeiro, and it's like, I don't know if that's that good a level. Like, I've seen some Brazilian football, and even in the top division, there's not a whole lot of defending going on.
Yeah.
So playing against a Gary Rowett team is going to be a complete shell shock to the system. But then he's managed in Spain, where he's done okay. Like, it's probably more a style fit than this guy's got a good record. They've probably looked at the way he plays and gone, yeah, okay, like, we like his style. It fits our squad. I think he's unlikely to be the worst manager in the division. I think he's more unlikely to be the best manager in the division.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would put him 24th or like, again, I think he's likely to be a better manager than the bottom 3 managers, just because he seems to do pretty okay in Spain. Like, he doesn't seem like a complete out of nowhere shot in the dark. It's a typical Watford appointment.
Yeah, I sort of see it as he come off a good season with Valladolid. He did well with Cruzeiro in Brazil, but as you said, that's a hard division to judge.
Yeah,
at the best of times. Again, it was the second division in Brazil as well, so even harder to judge. But he's coming off an OKC. I just don't really get it. And as I said, with Watford's track record and managers being awful, and I think this is a manager who's going to need time to implement his ideas, and he's not going to get it at Watford because they don't have patience, as we've seen with basically everyone they've employed for the past decade. So
yeah, I kind of thought, like, by the time we did this video, they might have a different manager anyway, so I thought it was safe to put him in 19th.
Yeah, as I said, who knows? You might get sacked in the next 2 hours before you even play the game. With their track record, you never know. But yeah, it might be harsh. I just looked at the rest of the list and I thought they're either got more experience or I'd rather have. I think the ambitious is a bit more higher with people like Jakirovic, Stefan, etc. So for me, it was. And not as I said, I don't think there's anyone bad. I don't think he's a terrible manager. It was hard to rank the bottom because it was sort of like a lot of meh managers or no idea managers mixed into sort of anywhere from 24th to sort of about 16th. It was all about a similar story. But for me, I have put him rock bottom.
He's also quite young, so I think there's room to improve as well.
Yeah, just a shame he won't get the time to improve at Watford.
No, well, of course, but
next up, Ryan Mason at West Brom, and for me, I don't know about you, but this is one where I could see me being really, really different come the end of the season because I think he is a brilliant coach, but I couldn't rank him any higher because he has no real managerial experience yet.
Exactly. I think by the end of the season, this will be a completely revised number. I think probably higher. Like he's coached under some very, very good managers, and we're seeing more and more these sort of assistants or coaches who become managers, having learned from the top coaches, tend to do very well. Obviously, McKenna and then Chris Davis, who was mentioned before, being two obvious ones in this division, but there's lots of others. And I do think Ryan Mason will do well. It's just I can't in good faith put him higher than 16th yet, but I think I will quite soon.
I honestly, this is one of the ones where we were looking for a new manager in February. I was so high on looking at Ryan Mason because I really do believe he is a very, very talented coach. You know, this is a man who still is. I don't know if he's still in his 20s or very early in his 30s. You know, he's a very young manager, all things considered. Again, you know, we've seen it with a lot of times people go with the young managers, and it really does seem to work at this level. You know, we saw it with Kieran McKenna, as you said, and Chris Davis. So I'm really high on this being a very good appointment for West Brom. But as you said, I cannot physically put him higher than about where he is just because we don't know yet. It could end up being a horrible, horrible mistake, but I can't see that being the case. I think when you come to the end of the season, this will be someone in the top 10 for me, 100%. You know, seeing players like Brennan Johnson credit his massive turnaround in form, not to Ange, it was to Ryan Mason. You've seen so many players come through and credit Mason to what he did at Spurs in that backroom stuff. So I think this can only be a good thing for West Brom, and I would be amazed if this turns out to be a bad appointment.
Yeah. Weirdly, he's 16th, but I'd be more excited to have him as my manager than like anyone up to like 9th.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I'd be pretty excited.
It's just the unknowns. We can't really, in good faith, rank someone higher than someone with like 10 years of managerial experience and with someone who hasn't actually managed anyone full time yet, apart from Spurs, where it was full time, but not really. Yeah. And finally, here come the flow of comments. It's normally from Birmingham fans, but I can imagine this week it's going to be from Wrexham fans. Because finally, we ended up Phil Parkinson, who lands at bottom of your list, and he lands at 23rd on my list. And you did say to me for a bit of a, I think you know what you're getting by putting Phil Parkinson bottom of this list, so I will let you go first.
Yeah, I thought about not putting him bottom because it would I couldn't be bothered having that argument. But no, I do genuinely think he is the worst manager in the division. I do think for me there is like a bit of a bias against managers who play that sort of physical. I don't want to call it long ball because that's quite dismissive, but like direct, aggressive style. Like I mean, I've got Ismail and Parkinson as my bottom two. That speaks volumes. But I think Wrexham, given the financial power they had in League One, and again, that's ironic, obviously, a Birmingham fan, the power they had in League One, I think they were actually quite underwhelming. They are really difficult to play against, but they're even more difficult to watch. They are an ugly, ugly team who I'm not going to say they were fortunate to get out of League One because they weren't fortunate. They were probably like the third best team in the division. I think Charlton were better than them. They scored a lot of late goals that comes from the amount of pressure they were able to build on teams because they would just keep bombarding you. They were fitter than you. They were stronger than you. They were bigger than you. Were they better footballers than most of like the teams around them? I don't think so. And I don't think they were trying to play much football either. I think part of that is because Parkinson, he plays the way he knows, and what he knows is more lower league management than it is Like he's not managed the Championship for a long time, and the game has changed. And I think some of these younger, more talented managers might run rings around him. That said, Wrexham have made some good additions, especially this week, that will help them out. And I sort of said last week on the transfer roundup, I think they'll really struggle. I'm not convinced they're going to struggle because I think they'll sack Parkinson before December, and I think they'll be fine. But I do think he is, I think quite clearly the worst manager in the division, and I think that'll become more obvious throughout the season. I don't see a world where Phil Parkinson is the Wrexham manager at the end of this season.
I agree with a lot of it. I mean, I put him 23rd, so it's not far off. Again, back-to-back promotions, you can't argue too much. It's still as much as it was the best teams and a lot of money spent for the divisions they were in, it's still, you still have to go out there and get the results, and he got the results out of the players that he had. Still not an easy feat to do. I don't think, I said, there's a reason he hasn't managed in the Championship for a while. It's been a very long time since he was managing in this division, and there was a reason he dropped all the way down to the National League. As much as the project with Wrexham, there was still a reason he didn't get a job higher than that. I don't think he's a terrible manager. I just don't think at this level he's quite up to the scratch. Again, that's why he hasn't been here for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't think Phil Parkinson is the man who's going to lead Wrexham to where Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney want them to be, which is the Premier League. I cannot see a million worlds where there's one where Phil Parkinson is a Wrexham manager in the Premier League. As you said, some brilliant signings this week with Josh Windass and Lewis O'Brien. As a Swansea fan who watched O'Brien at the back end of last season, that is one of the best midfielders in the Championship. And I think if we hadn't have signed Galbraith, we would have definitely been back in for him as well. So he's going to have a better squad than what, as I said on the transfer roundup last week, they need more players, and they've done certainly that already. And I assume there's a lot more where that came from as well. So there's certainly room to play with that Wrexham team. But I think if you want to be a team that plays in the Premier League within a couple of seasons, Phil Parkinson is not the man who's going to take you there. And as you said, it's a pretty tough team to watch. And I sort of agree with you with being a Swansea fan. We are notorious for playing good on-the-floor football, and you do not get that with Phil Parkinson. So, yeah, 23rd for me. I couldn't really put him bottom just because of how well he's done with this team. You know, he obviously gets the best out of them, but I think going to the Championship next season is going to be a different test.
Yeah, I just think, again, I think the managers in this league are pretty good, and I think he's the worst one, but I don't think he's terrible. I don't think he's a terrible manager. I just think he's not managed at this level for a while, and there's a reason for that. I think his team, the way his team plays, I personally find it difficult to watch, and it's effective at League One. If they don't change their style, I struggle to see it being as effective in the Championship. Like, you're not going to bully some of these teams. Like, you're not going to bully some of the Championship teams. I know people will say that about League One, like, oh, you can't be. You sort of can because they were just better than them. Like, the ball would fall to them. It would fall to Rathbone, or it would fall to somebody, and they would just take control from there. Like, you don't really get away with that. We beat them quite handily at home last season, because we sort of beat them in the duel, and then we just had so much of the ball that we just killed them. And I think a lot of, certainly the top half of the Championship will be able to do that to them this season if they don't change their style.
I think it'll be interesting to see how long, if he does stay, how long it does last with Phil Parkinson and Wrexham, because this is a team with huge ambitions, and I'm not sure he entirely fits the mould. So we'll soon find out. Yeah. But for both of us, in the bottom three for you, have him dead last. And that does wrap up our rankings 1 to 24. So let us know what you think in the comments. I'm sure especially Wrexham fans are probably going to disagree with us on a few of these, but let us know what you think. Who do you think is the best and worst manager in the division? Thank you, Elliott, for joining me, and we will see you all next week.
See you all.